Anyway, let me start with this thing, which as always has a little little presentation so that you get some visuals of what I saw and what I can reference. Let me know if you can see presentation. Yeah. Nope. Yes. Maybe. I don't know. I'm guessing you can, because I can see myself and the teeny tiny fireplace. Not so teeny tiny, to be honest. Anyway, can you hear me? You all hear me? Beautiful. Okay. Let me go into full on presentation mode and talk a little bit about the topic of the day, which is China. So, just, overall, I was there for about 3 weeks. I was invited to both attend and speak in a conference organized by a bunch of people based out of Singapore, but who have roots in China. And yeah, and I just took on the excuse to move around and visit a bunch of companies and obviously experience mainland China. This is the very, well, probably very naive view of a first time attendant. And by attendant, I mean it is my first time in mainland China. I have been all around Southeast Europe. I used to, not Europe, excuse me, Southeast Asia. Um, I used to live in Japan. I lived there for a couple of years, and I have visited Hong Kong a couple times. But to be honest, it really doesn't compare, particularly on the mega city side of things. Things are just completely different. So, quick disclaimer: obviously, everything I'm going to say is my own opinion right here. There's three major entities: the fund, the hedge fund, equity focus field, Emirate Ventures now, which is going to be phase two of my project, and 25 Delta, all of which are companies that are completely independent of this. And if you want to make an investment decision, even though there's really not much mention, well, I won't mention individual names here, but just know that this is not at all a recommendation to check with a professional or your advisor. Yeah, just the usual stuff, guys. So I'm going to talk about all of these things. It is sort of the agenda. The ones in bold and with an asterisk, they are my favorite, or the ones where I think I've learned the most, to be honest. Part of it has to do with complexity, part of it has to do with just sheer luck. And most of it is just, well, my take of it all is that we have a very distorted view of what actually is going on in China as outsiders who have, well, like myself, not been in China up until very recently. So let's start with China. I won't get political in this thing. So, just map, Google. Uh, I just want you to sort of locate the places I've been. So most of the companies, as you'll see in the next slide, are located most of the productive center is located around sort of the southeast part of the country, all along the coast, and also along the River Yangtze, which essentially starts in Shanghai and goes all the way to like Sichuan. This productive center obviously happened for a reason, but it has also it has a mix of like centralized planning and the whole capitalist system, self-developed, self-reliant circle of innovation, whereby people come, and because there's more people, there's more innovation, which causes more people to come, and all of that good stuff. So a bit of a circle of virtue or virtuous cycle. Anyway, these I've essentially been along this coast, and then I took a couple of days, let's call it off, and also part of it was learning in this little province, or not so little province called Yunnan. Locals will probably kill me with the pronunciation because it's pronounced something like Yunnan, or I can't actually do the accent. Anyway, to excuse my lack of ability to pronounce foreign languages, particularly Asian languages, but I really like the place. I think it's beautiful. So do take the part of the outcome. I sort of took from it rather than the pronunciation of it. Anyway, major cities. Cities in general are divided into tiers, and tiers define everything. This is sort of the financial or central planning of it all. Tiers represent two things. The first one is the size of your city, and the second one is sort of the responsibility. So, depending on the tier, you are on a more productive end of things, or you're on a more touristic side of things. The prices of, let's say, for example, residing in the place vary as well. A great example would be probably Beijing versus Yunnan. So Yunnan is sort of meant for people who want to retire. It has a lot of tourists, but this is like in national tourists and people that get to a certain age and just want a place where the weather is stable and you have a bunch of activities that you can enjoy in the later years of your life. Because that's the case, one will be classified, like Kunming, for example, would be classified as a tier 4 city. That means that prices should, be along a certain margin, prices for housing, as well as prices for, I don't know, transportation and stuff like that. The same applies to larger cities. So Shanghai, for example, will be a tier 1 city. And that means that it is a productive center where you produce a bunch of major things, or you have the headquarters of major corporations, and prices will move accordingly. Part of it, again, being centrally planned. The other part is just natural to a capitalist-centered system, whereby people with certain connections, they end up being together. And let's think about the supply chain of, I don't know, fish. So in order to fish, you actually need a river or the ocean to be nearby. You need to fish. You need to move the fish, so transportation. Then you need to process the fish, and then you need to distribute the fish. What that means is that all of the companies that do this at a large scale will probably be within a certain region or within a certain place. The more people you have, particularly the cities, tier 1 cities may have like tens of millions of people. Well, the corporations just get larger, and so does the supply chain in a local sense. So yeah, that is part of geography. Just know that I've been around the major cities and then Yunnan at the very end of the trip. Companies. So companies are a little bit of a touchy subject because in order to understand companies here, you need to understand two things. The first one is obviously the structure, the legal structure of these companies, and the second one is the incentives for them. I will be posting this on Wednesday, and the Wednesday post, which the whole thing was supposed to be written, but I just thought it was way too long. It would have been like 1.5 hours of reading or something like that. Anyway, on that post, I will be posting about 3 of the 9 companies I visited, just to understand their business models and what they do and where they come from and what they're doing and why we can learn a ton about them. Regardless, the point is that companies have, two things that we need to understand, and this is applicable to all of Chinese companies. The first one is going to be the structure of them. So most of these, or the larger ones that you can see, they are Hong Kong headquartered, and they have this thing called a variable interest entity, a VIE for short. I'm sure you've heard of these. What VIEs do is they allow anyone to purchase them. Again, they need to be Hong Kong based, and they are supposed to be a way of giving economic interest to anyone in a sense, because instead of giving you ownership of whatever you're buying, they give you a right to the profits of whatever they're buying. So not really the assets. You can't really. It's like you can't really own land per se, but you can own a part of their earnings. That was sort of the intention. And then you have A shares. The A shares, or the A listed shares, are the shares of mainland companies. These are usually not listed in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, but rather in the different stock exchanges in mainland China. And these are little bit harder to own. They also have their own complications, and there's things like minority related shares and certain reserves for certain people. But the main idea for A shares is that you are either a Chinese citizen or you are a Chinese company in order to own them. That's sort of the minimum requisite. You and I, we could probably set up a company, like we could set up shop in China. Whether that is wise or not, well, there's many variables. The main one being the fact that if you're inside China, it is very hard to get out of China. There's a lot of controls when it comes to currencies and essentially pulling out money out of China. It's fine. Just if you want to go the other way, if you want to put money in China, they'll be glad you did. But taking money out, it can be a little bit harder. The second one is incentives. And this actually blew my mind. So incentive wise, I'd say China is way, 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 way more capitalistic than Europe, definitely. And they're, I'd say, at least on par with the rest of the world, particularly the US, who, has the claim to be the capitalistic society, or at least that's how things are framed. But yeah, I mean, company wise, I'll just give you examples. So VAT is they have four major types of VAT. They're almost, except for one of them, they're all in the single digits. And then when it comes to companies have a 25% corporate tax, but you have two major exceptions, which, to be honest, is essentially every company that works around China. The first one is technological companies. Technological companies, instead of paying a 25% rate, they are paying and will be paying, as long as they're innovating, 15%, which it's a way of incentivizing certain things to happen. More importantly, the way these operate is quite intelligent in the mix of central planning versus capitalism. So what the central government does, it will give you certain directions, and especially when new sectors come up. Right now, the one in vogue would be AI, but there's a ton of them. Electric cars is a really good example of a more mature sector that went through the exact same cycle. What they do is within let's say 24 or 36 months of the government establishing it as a priority, they just subsidize everyone. And by everyone, I mean everyone, their mom and their grandma. Everyone gets a subsidy, everyone that is doing something related to that industry. However, once those, let's say 36 months, 3 years pass, what the government does is they will take out the subsidy part. Maybe they'll subsidize some things like consumption. So if you buy a car, you may still have a subsidy, but not on the production side. Um, and they just allow brutal competition to happen. And what ends up happening, or has happened, at least with electric cars again would be a good example, but this is a continual, they keep on doing this for every single new industry that appears. What ends up happening is there's going to be 3, 4, 5 players that end up consolidating the market. However, those 3 or 5 players, I'm saying 3 to 5, but it may be 7. It really depends on the industry. Let's call it 5, just no ground. Those 5 players are chosen by the consumer. They're not chosen the fact that they remain a thing is because people keep on buying their products. And these guys can either buy out the competition or just keep on doing whatever they're doing because they will consolidate the market. But they consolidate it in the best way possible, which is by essentially becoming monopolies or oligopolies in this case, chosen by the people. It would be like, why do you buy an iPhone and not any other phone? Because I don't know, you like the ecosystem, you like certain things. It's easy to like how podcasts work in it, or you like the camera, or a bunch of reasons that each individual will make. However, in the aggregate, when you aggregate millions of decisions, those votes count towards the companies that end up consolidating the market. And I think it's really smart, to be honest. I think it's a way of pushing industries forward. There is a little bit of dumping in the middle ground of this all. And by dumping, I mean they will end up selling below cost just to outcompete everyone else. Think about the Uber Eats of the world, where or like Uber, where everything was super subsidized at the beginning, and then they just bumped up prices. But it works. It works really well, and I think will keep them as the perhaps not number one innovator, but definitely on the list of top three most innovative countries in the world for a very long time, which is, well, as you'll see, a sort of a recurring theme in the Chinese way of things. So again, incentives and the structures. Those two are the things that will keep companies churning good results. It will keep their margin very tight, but it will make them extremely competitive to the point where, and I'm sorry for using this example again, but it is like very present. Electric vehicles produced in China will be priced at like half of what they are in the US and maybe one third of what they're priced in Europe. The reason they're not being sold in mass in these countries is essentially import duties. So, a bunch of taxes in the way that allow for local industry to remain competitive. But if that wasn't the case, it would, like, these guys would be just toast because the Chinese have just surpassed them, and I believe that this will again be a recurring theme in what we see not only here but in the next 5, 10, 15 years of however industries develop. So culture wise, this would be section number 2. Again, I will talk about the 3 major companies in the post next Wednesday, and this will probably be like a 20, 30 minutes write up in addition to the posting of this recording. So culture. Culture is probably the defining factor that really, really shocked me. There's a combination of collectivism and individualism that sort of blows my mind. Sometimes for good, other times for not so good. So the examples that come to mind are the combination, for example, of old and new. Uh, this is obviously a very ancient country with a very ancient culture. It's a very rich culture as well. So you'll have something like ceremonies for tea, like people pouring tea and multiple brews of the same tea with certain conditions, being very precise about it and very delicate, very deliberate. Um, and then you have like, you look out the window and you'll see a massive skyscraper that was built like 10 years ago with like a super modern facade. So that combination of old and new is something I really, really love. And to be honest, it really speaks highly of their culture. Basically, because having the new skyscraper is easy, but maintaining the culture, maintaining an ancient culture, and being very appreciative of that, which is very connected to like being appreciative of elders and all that stuff. People that maintain tradition uh, is, I don't know. It's something I think we should all aspire to do. Sometimes we forget about the past and we end up repeating the same mistakes. And I feel like these guys, for example, have very present some things that happened in the recent past that they really don't want to repeat. For example, I think they call it the century of humiliation. Essentially the whole cultural revolution and being so far behind. Something they are very very present. They don't want to repeat. Another recurring thing for me was the Sino, what's it called? Sino Japanese. Anyway, the war they had with Japan, the whole thing that happened in Manchuria, and how, well, they essentially got humiliated in multiple ways and massacred in some other. I don't think the Japanese were very nice there. Do take in mind that I lived in Japan and I really appreciate that culture as well. I just think that when you essentially dehumanize people, you can treat them as animals and nothing really happens. But then you look to the past, you look to your ancestors, and you're like, wow, you really went too far in some things. Anyway, just my take on the culture and something I really, really like. They're also obsessed with, as you can see here, you see the little boat with like the flamboyant, and so like bubbly. They decorated it super pink. There's like a bunch of signs that say "Marry me." They like the spectacle, and all of these are meant to, put proposals and all that good stuff. I don't know. It's part of their culture. The showing that you're giving is part of it. And yeah. Anyway, language. So there's 3 words that really shocked me. There's other stuff that also shocked me. I just didn't include it in the list to be more rigorous and to the point as well. And do excuse again my pronunciation. I will go from left to right, but these are Fangshung, Fantou, and Zhongguo. Okay, Fangshung means the liberation of life, and this is something they do super like ritualistic. But if you go to a temple, you'll see like a bunch of fish just swimming in like a massive pond, bunch of turtles as well, and it's sort of a quote unquote sacrifice they do. It's supposed to be um, giving away life that you could have probably killed. In this case, killed to like eat. And so in the ritual of giving life, you're sort of, honoring that life and, hopefully giving to the universe, or the universe gives back. And I just thought it was beautiful. The concept is sort of like, I don't know, it reminds me of like komorebi, or something like the light. There's this Japanese word that describes the light that goes through the forest, and, super poetic type of thing. Anyway, really liked it. More applicable to us though would be Fantou. Fantou is a concept of it literally means reverse and investment, and it's usually something linked with being very collaborative with like municipal investments. So if you take money from municipal investors or municipal entities, what ends up happening is you're essentially asked for a bunch of guarantees. So think of it as, like you need to build infrastructure, XYZ, like a bridge or whatever. And and because you're sort of tied to that piece of infrastructure, the party that is constructing it just keeps on making demands. And at one point, it just reduces your IRR, your expected return, but things usually go beyond that. And you not only lose your expected IRR, imagine you wanted like a 15% return, and you add 15 gets down to 10, then it gets down to 5, and most of the times it gets to the negative numbers. So again, reverse investing is usually linked to the fact that you end up losing money from all of these projects. Um, and yeah, just thought of it as funny. Do note that even though the higher up authorities in China, I think, are extremely, extremely competent, the local municipal governments are not so much. So beyond competency and probably bits and pieces of corruption, I'm pretty sure it's just uh, people not matching, interests. So, obviously investors will want a return, but the municipal governments usually want something else. I would say what? Anyway, yeah, and then Chongguo is the way Chinese people call China. So they refer to China as the middle kingdom, or the kingdom in the middle. The central kingdom would be probably the best translation to this. They don't refer to it as just, China, or like I don't know, like Spain. It's not like a made up thing. It's much more of a concrete term of how they view probably their status in the world, which is at the center of it, at the center of civilization, at the center of culture. I think it is pretty accurate, to be honest, because they are, again, an ancient civilization that has perdured over the years, and it's been up and down, obviously. But overall, they've had a central line, which is long-term planning. And yeah, and on that note, we will talk about the essentially two lines that influence that long-term planning. The first one is probably Buddhism. There's a little bit of Shintoism as well there. But Buddhism is definitely one of the long-standing, let's say, notes. Funnily enough, it is really not encouraged, particularly religion in general is not encouraged, particularly in places like Beijing. It will probably be a right band. But then you go to the side provinces, especially those with minorities like the Naxi or the Bai in Yunnan, and those guys are even encouraged to the point where not only Buddhism is there, but I've heard of people building churches and whatnot in those provinces just to keep minorities content. Anyway, the point is the influence is undeniable from Buddhism, uh, and that is because a lot of the core values of how they see things, how they respect certain procedures, is just Like you can literally observe it by watching people eat and watching people interact. Uh, I think it's like a baseline good, a baseline collectivism, a baseline I'm thinking about the consequences of my actions. We will talk about the individualism part in a second, but just religion really affects that part, the part of giving. And there's also a second component to it, which I also think is religious, funnily enough. It would be characterized more as philosophical in the literal sense of things, but in the more, abstract and the more, let's see where this takes us, way of things, I think it is partly a religion, which would be Confucianism. So that the teachings of Confucius, and actually, funny enough, most of it is written in his annals, and those are extremely interesting if you want to take a good read and sort of try to understand from afar what these guys really do. I think it's a really good read. It would be something similar to the Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, for the Latin Roman type of critical thought component. Anyway, Confucius is more of a figure. Who could it be? Something like Moses, like Moses bringing down the Ten Commandments type thing. Unlike Buddhism, which is more abstract and more open to interpretation, Confucius is more of like you should totally, like do this, this, and this, and not do this, this, and this. Most of it is embedded in books like Tao Te Ching or The Art of War, and books we probably all heard about but haven't touched, which have this poetic style. They go like there's like a little bit of prose, but it's again like poetic in the form, and the chapters are meant to be like individual, virtue seeking um, assignments. I wouldn't even call them stories. It's like they're pushing you towards a certain goal or a certain behavior. Anyway, the point, and I'm deviating. That's again why I'm doing this on video and not through text. The point is that both Buddhism and Confucianism have a massive impact on how these guys behave. And just so you know, fun fact: this, by the way, I did it so that my girlfriend throughout the don't tell her this, but throughout the the trip, she was my wife because again, part of culture, you're not supposed to like share a room with someone who's not your wife. Anyway, the point is, I tried to explain the differences between different types of Buddhism, which I've experienced two of them, and not so much the Tibetan part, but definitely the Thai one. And I literally asked Gemini to depict them, and this is the picture that it outputted in about 10 seconds while I was, like reading a bunch of things. Just so you know, if you see someone dressed like the guy on the left, that would be a Chinese Buddhist type of priest, monk. The middle one is the Thai version, and the one on the right is the Tibetan version. They all look the same. They all have a similar way of thinking, but akin to I don't know, in Catholicism we would have Protestants. We'll have like I don't know. There's a bunch of different uh, branches that all have a sort of common way of thinking. So I don't know, the Coptic Church, for example, in Northern Africa, will share books with the Catholics in Rome, but they each have their own, picking and choosing. In this case, of books. In the case of Buddhists, of ways of interpreting those books. But similar thing. It's just a different take on the same principles, which in my opinion are well, quite fulfilling for people in the sense that we all have a spiritual or like a religious part of ourselves, and these guys are very good at understanding that need and sort of giving us perhaps not you know instructions but definitely directions. So it's not like they're telling you need to do XYZ, but they are giving you a general sense of direction and purpose, sort of guiding you towards parts of self exploration and learning. Anyway, just thought it was a great example. So yeah, One of my favorite parts, made in China. When you hear made in China, I'm pretty sure think of low quality commodity, probably something you're going to use once and then throw away. I thought this was sort of a cultural shock for me. And I think the best depiction of it would be silver. So while on the second part of my trip, I was looking at buying a bunch of gifts to some people, friends and family. By the way, Adrian, if you're watching this, you've got a bracelet waiting for you. So do note that and come visit me. I will share some tea, stories, and silver with you. But seriously though, while being in Yunnan, yes, you, Adrian, I knew you were here. You're welcome. Anyway, uh, there's two different types of silver in Yunnan, a province, by the way, very famous for its silver. You're gonna have do excuse me for the butchering of these words, but again, Zhangyin and Zuehayin. One on the left, Zhangyin is known as Tibetan silver, and Tibetan silver would be the made in China concept that we all have. It's just bullshit. It'll maybe have a little bit of silver, mostly be something like copper, but it's going to have like zinc and nickel and everything all around it. It's just not silver, even though it's called silver. Okay. The other, Sui Huayin, is a very famous silver from the region that is at the very, 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 very least 92.5% silver. And it has higher purities, but depending on what you were working it for, what the purpose of it is, whether you're going to scratch it a lot or not, whether you're going to wear it, whether, it really depends. It'll have different purities. But again, the minimum purity is 92.5. And what that means, it is legit silver, essentially. That is the made in China that I've realized happens on a recurring basis. So I've ordered food multiple times as a takeaway. They have this app called Meituan. I did not use Meituan because I was blocked and great firewall and all the good stuff. I won't go into that part. But I did order a lot of food to just I'll take the food and I'll eat it in my hotel because the food looks really good. But at the same time, I'm tired. So, just go over there and watch show or whatever. Every time I'd ordered, I was super impressed by two things, which may seem like nothing. They're, again, like it just blows my mind. The first one was the bags. Holy crap. The simplest thing, they had like proper plastic bags. It would be like a bag you would pay like a couple bucks for, It's like a proper, either hard plastic, like proper plastic, or it'll be something like cáñamo, whatever that's called in English, where it's made out of a material that you would reuse over and over again in Europe. And they just gave it to me for free. Like I ordered some noodle, like a noodle soup. It would cost me like €1.50, so nothing. And they'll give me this bag, which is probably worth like $3 in Europe, just because it is the standard. And more so, like the expression in English would be, what is more, they gave it to me, or they were giving it to me in this plastic container, freaking Tupperware, which I would also have paid like $3 or $4 in Europe to get, because it's like hard plastic, like a proper thing. It really won't fall off. It had like a proper lid. Just, the container and the bag are probably worth more in Europe than the actual food. And that completely blew my mind. All this to say that the quality of most of the things I saw, and these are like food-wise, clothes-wise, just in general, was crazy high. I just think that this is a Europe thing, meaning Europe demands shit products, so they get shit products from China. And it completely blew my mind, because Chinese don't want shit products. However, they will produce the shit products, because by producing more of the products, both the shitty products and the good products, they just make their average cost lower. So, economies of scale and all that good stuff. They just keep the good stuff for themselves. So yeah, just as a made in China part one. On the silver part, I will give you some tips, because I am, again, super thorough with these things. In order to check whether something is silver or not, I think you should do three things. The first one, this would be like one of the bracelets. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a wooden thing with like silver endings. Anyway, the first one is sound. If you like tap on it or tap on it with another metal or with anything, it has like a higher octave sound. So it has like a sweet, higher tone. It's very recognizable once you hear it, but if you haven't heard it, just like rock to like a silver something with like a copper something, or like just steel, you'll see the difference immediately. Second thing you should do, ice. So if it's actual silver, if you put a little bit of ice, it will instantly melt because it just absorbs the heat. Um, and it will also feel instantly cold, like within 2 seconds. Like you put it on and it just like melts and it feels really, really cold. And the third one is obviously magnetic. So if it's magnetic, it's not silver. If you do those three tests, you'll probably know in like a few seconds whether it's actual silver or not. In the case of Tibetan silver, the shitty made in China European view of silver, it'll probably be like it'll be magnetic. It'll not sound that way, like a sweet high octave way, and it'll be magnetic, yeah, and it'll probably not melt, or the ice will melt really slowly. Anyway, the second made in China part, food. So I just thought this was funny, but food was really good, to be honest. It was fairly spicy. My girlfriend cannot handle it. I love a little bit of spice in my food. It just makes my life, it makes colors brighter, if you will. They also had the other side of food, which is it's just protein, bro, food. And it's not something I particularly enjoy. I have tried it. I did not try it in my China trip. I tried it like, I don't know, in Thailand. This was probably like 10 years ago or whatever. But yeah, I had the whole scorpion and crickets and freaking worms and all that good stuff. I don't know. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. They're completely obsessed with one thing, and that will be chicken feet. And holy crap, chicken feet. I don't know what it is, but they smell like you really don't want to smell chicken feet. They taste okay, but the smell, man, I think they like macerate it too much, or I don't know what they do. It's not my thing. Anyway, it was just like little anecdotal and fun part. Going on to more serious stuff though, infrastructure. This was another thing that really, really, really impressed me. Holy crap, these guys are good. And they're good at the base level, not only because of size, but also because of quality. Airports and especially train stations were mind boggling to me. They were all on time. The way you had no tickets, your ID, your passport was your ticket. Everyone, you know, sort of followed a certain protocol and everything seemed very organized. You just had like boarding happening 15 minutes before the train. Everyone was there. You just like boarded. It took 5 to 10 minutes. I don't know. There was like a little burst of energy and everyone then was seated all of a sudden. You also had three options. You had like a first class, second class ticket, regular thing. But then you also had a second class that had no seat assigned. And I think that was super smart, particularly on the bullet trains. The bullet trains will take you, at 200 kilometers or more per hour from A to B really, really fast. And some people just can't afford it. So what do you do? Well, in order for the train to have more capacity, or more importantly, not go empty, you just put out tickets that don't have an assigned seat. And what ends up happening is there's always seats that are available. So even though you'll buy a seatless seat, you will eventually, like seat somewhere around the train. And I just thought that was very, very smart. It's a better use of capacity and it's really good for economics. Also, price wise, again, I'm talking about the trains. The planes are expensive or like regular price tickets, but the trains, they're probably subsidized. But they were, I think the longest one we took was 4 hours and it was $15. I think that's a very fair price for a ticket. Yeah. yeah, no more comments on that part. Um, Overall, very, very impressed, particularly on like the tiered system as well. Because tier one cities, you expect to have pretty good infrastructure. Even like the lowest tier cities, a little village which by the way, a little village means there's like 1 million people living there. Little village, incredible connections. Like I was just very, very impressed with the overall level of like the trains, the stations, just everything. Everything was super smooth. The other part of infrastructure, though, is cars. And this is where we will get to the individualism versus collectivism debate. So, up until now, religion, Confucianism, uh, Buddhism, frames sort of bigger picture, trying to help each other type framework. That all falls apart when you drive with one of these people. These guys are nuts, okay? And let's take that seriously. Let me break it down, but completely nuts. I have not seen more aggression and more use of the accelerator and like the fluidity. I think they were like using, because they're mostly automatic cars, like the right foot on the accelerator and the left foot on the brake. Because the way they went from one to the other, it was just not good. I Especially in like the larger cities, I would take Diddy's, which would be the equivalent of an Uber. I got dizzy every time, like every single time, just because the way they drive is like you're like going back and forth all the time, and they will take the smallest, teeny tiniest space that they can get from the lane on either side, and they just like ram into it. There's no concern for whoever is coming. Okay, they just like push the front of the car into it, and they're like, yeah, it's my turn to go through this place, and that's it. And people they will therefore compensate by reducing those spaces to the absolute minimum, so people don't like cross each other. At the same time, I saw a total of 0 accidents. I by 0 accidents, I don't mean I was expecting to be in a car crash or anything like that. That's not the point. Point was that I I would expect to see like people on the sides of the road. They were either super efficient with clearing people in accidents, or they were just good drivers. I really don't understand. They're like used to this whole thing. But 0 accidents, 0 crashes. More noticeably, I really looked into this actually because I when I notice something, I usually can't unnotice it. There's 0 scratches. Their cars don't have scratches. They don't have bumps. Most of the fleet is also very new, which was surprising for a southeastern country. But yeah, their cars are in really really good state. They either take really good care of them, or they just like are good drivers, or they know what each other is doing. You will have a mix though of ancient stuff, so like a three-wheeled bicycle converted into a little teeny tiny truck that goes at like 20 kilometers an hour, and that's it. Going on the rightmost side the of the lane, like the rightmost lane, and then all of the new cars, which are mostly electric vehicles, going on the other side. But beyond that, I don't know. Anyway, I do think that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. I sort of base a lot of my thought process in that premise. And what this means is if they do this when they're driving, pretty sure they do this when they're doing other stuff. In our case, more applicably, the negotiation side of things and the competition side of things. The competition in like a business to business terms, not like they're stabbing each other or anything like that. It's more of like going to price this very seriously, like very rigidly. I'm going to try to move around my competitors so that I gain an advantage and all of that's good stuff. Anyway, just my observations. You can take whatever conclusions you want from it. Um, yeah, this is something I don't want to disclose a lot about, but I think it's worth a mention. So initially, I went to Shanghai for a conference brought to my attention by a Japanese investor who's the head of like a multifamily office right now. He's an allocator, and he invited me over to this thing where he like gets allocators and managers together and a bunch of other interesting people, which are really not like finance related. They just like happen to be there. Um, he puts it all together and we just chat. I just want to give him props because this guy, like the event was just fantastic. It's probably well, I think the best event every year, like on a recurrent basis, is the Rob Vinal meeting in Engelberg. But this year, I mean, this is a really, really, really close competitor. It's just that it's a smaller event, so it's not as like professionalized, and there's a lot of the way you structure it is way more secretive. I can't, for example, or I sort of promised I wouldn't. It's not that I can't, but it's just not part of the game. Can't disclose the contents of the meeting. The people I've met. A lot of it has to do with the fact that allocators want to remain anonymous, or they want to be on the down low, which makes a lot of sense. If you have like $1 billion, I would also want to be extremely discreet about it. The whole point, though, is super interesting people, super well structured conference. There's like a debate, like a conversation part to it, a little bit of lectures going to it, a lot of sharing just of experiences, and people were super open. So yeah, again, just want to give props. I won't disclose anything that happens or names of people that attended. I just think it was really good, and I want to bring it to your attention. And that brings me to the last slide of this presentation, the last part, which is the people. Oof, oh damn, met so many interesting people. This was very difficult to choose. I just chose 3, but I could have chosen like 20, to be honest. Again, won't disclose names, but I think the most impressive and most well-rounded people I met were a soldier or a former soldier uh, who fought against the Japanese over in Manchuria at the time. Super humble guy. Did not speak he didn't speak a lick of English. He just spoke Japanese. Not Japanese. He spoke Chinese, and we had to like translate the whole thing. But we were probably back and forth for like at the very least a couple hours, or probably more like 4 or 5 hours. It was just a lot of movement in between. We changed places. We moved around. Super generous individual. He had so many interesting experiences. Part of them were traumatic. Others were very unifying. He was also part of a minority, which makes this even crazier because minorities, it's like a double-edged sword. When you're in China, you need to like be part of the Chinese culture, like the one China thing, and at the same time, you're also encouraged to like maintain your own language and cultures and all the good stuff. Anyway, super interesting fellow. I hope to see him back at some point in my life. I would really, really like it. Not very resourceful in the sense of like, he was just a well-rounded individual with a kind heart and a lot of baggage, and I just thought that was fascinating. I think he quit school when he was 16, and he has been all over China, doing work here and there, trying to keep his roots, like being close to his roots, but at the same time trying to experience the whole national aspect of being part of a country as rich in culture and history as China. Yeah. Anyway, got a little bit sentimental there, but that would be person number 1. Person number 2 is actually a 2-time Oscar winner. He's a movie director who's I think is in his 70s by now, or late 60s at the very least. I thought he was brilliant. He was like the perfect mix of ego-driven, like egomaniacal driven personality with the humbling through harsh experiences in life and just like being told no, all into like this one ball of creativity with a lot of insecurities and a lot of humbleness to the insecurities. I don't know. He was just like super well rounded. So he had a ton of stories. He also knew how to tell these stories really well. Obviously, being winning 2 Oscars probably means that you're really freaking good. Winning 2 Oscars as a director probably means you're very, very freaking good at telling stories. Anyway, the guy sort of had this concept where he's in China right now, and he, I think he, I don't know if this is a good sell, but I think it's a good sell on the honest front. he keeps telling the Chinese people, because he's doing Chinese films now, or films around China, even though they're in English. He keeps telling them that they have really, really good stories. They're very rich when it comes to their stories and again, their culture and just like the content and the depth of it. And at the same time, he keeps telling them that they're shit at telling these stories, which I find fascinating. you know, it's the definition of a backhanded compliment. I like pat you and then I'll slap you. Anyway, thought the guy was brilliant. I think he was super interested in working with me. I would love to work with him, but again, he's probably like a million times as big as I am in every sense of the word. Maybe not the physical one because I am fat, but other than that, he's just anyway. And the point is, I really can't choose. I met a lot of people. If you know what that is on the right, a lot of people from Singapore. Met a lot of people from Singapore, a lot of people from Malaysia, a lot of people from a small town in Malaysia that is very connected to China because China just emigrated, or Chinese people emigrated there for a certain job back in the day. China linked Singaporeans were fascinating. They just had like such a unique take on the world. They had a lot of tradition, a lot of like family first, but at the same time, they're like, oh, yeah, we want to innovate here. We're learning from the mistakes. We're just pushing ourselves to the limit. And I'm not talking about like 20-year-old or 30-year-old. I'm talking like even 60-year-old people who were of extraordinary growth mentality. They just wanted to keep on learning. And that is something I'm fascinated with, I remember talking with this German investor back in the day, a few years ago, at the Rugby Now thing. And we went on a tour. We literally climbed a mountain together. We were together for like 2 or 3 hours. I think he spoke about 5% of the time. It was just ridiculous. He just kept on asking really good questions, even though he's probably, again, in his 70s or like late 60s at the very least. Just ask questions, just curious about life. The guy probably lived like 20 of my lives, and yet he keeps on, digging into certain, I don't know, in my case, like cultural aspects or certain, certain things I lived in the past that form my character and the way I think. And the way he framed these questions, which is like extractive in the best way possible. He's just like interested in like getting into the essence of what makes me me is just fascinating. Just watching that be playing live, it's just fascinating. At least fascinating to me. So yeah, that would be the 3 people I choose. I can't choose any single person from Singapore. There's probably like 5 people that I don't know how to choose from. They were all fantastic. Anyway, this brings it to a little wrapperoo. Again, we're all subbed, so this thing will, to be honest, do nothing for you. Since you attended this and it's live, let me know if you're interested in reading anything in particular from not only the China thing, but any resource pieces. Happy to help in any shape, way, or form. I think I have like 3 jobs at the moment and this. But I'm having such a good time with everything I'm doing. It's just ridiculous. There's obviously hurdles that you have to go through. Like right now, I'm listening to, I don't know what the number is, but 15 to 20 earnings calls. Stuff I missed in the last couple of weeks, so I need to catch up on that. Most of them are useless, but I have to go through them because sometimes they're not, and I'll find something very, very interesting. So yeah, anyway, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you have any questions. I will keep this going for another 5 minutes, and then I will wrap it up. As I pointed out before, this will be published on Wednesday, only the video part, and with the video posting, I will also include. This will sadly only be for paid members, but there's a lot of really good information, so I think it's just fair for them. I will post details on my top 3 companies I visited. Yeah. Any questions? I wish I could show you the thing. Yeah. Nope. Nope. Yeah. Well, if you guys are all well and done, I think I will wrap this up. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you around, even though it will probably be in written form. To stay curious, like the 70-year-olds who keep on asking questions. And yeah, I'll see you for tomorrow. Tomorrow there's a little bit of a surprise post. But yeah, have a good one, guys. Ciao, ciao. Oh, let me know if you like this thing again, because I really like it and you seem to enjoy it. Yeah.